fish heads, roly-poly fish heads, fish heads, fish heads, eat them up, yum.
There was no other way to start this video really, was there? Let's be honest with ourselves. SCP-527, Mr. Fish, a humanoid with a fish for a head. Short bloke, sharp dresser, dry sense of humour. That's about it, or is it? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and once again, I am your guide through the murky depths of the SCP Foundation as I try and answer the question, what if SCP-527 was real?
Fish heads, roly-poly fish heads, fish heads.
Quite. But before we get started, why don't you guys all let me know, if you had to have the head of another animal, you literally had to, what would you go for? I'm gonna go with like an eagle head. I'd be some kind of regal eagle harpy. I could peck out the eyes of those who displeased me. Whoa, okay, that got a bit intense a bit quick. I guess I'm just in one of those moods. This is gonna be a fun video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also, please do leave a thumbs up on this vid and stick around to the end where I'll be replying to comments from a previous one. Okie dokie, let's do this, Mr. Fish. So SCP-527 seems like a very uncomplicated fellow, if such a thing can be said for a designation of the Foundation. It is, and this really does seem to literally be it, a 5'4.5" male humanoid, unremarkable in almost all ways, except he has a whopping great fish for a head. Big bulky fish eyes, scales, a little fishy mouth, but yeah, other than that, pretty ordinary. To be fair though, boy does know how to dress. He wears a snappy suit and a top hat, and I feel like these days we need more top hats. Don't get me wrong, I love a good baseball cap, but to me it screams pictures of beers with wings and hot sauce, when actually I'm all about that absinthe and caviar, mess me up green fairy, and let's produce an impromptu 3-act play on the gilded bar top kind of gal. It's just my vibe. Off the bat, I have to say, if the SCP Foundation was real, Mr. Fish would be perfect for some Victorian vaudeville. He is freak show fodder if ever I saw it. Sadly for him though, 2019 isn't so much about the travelling troops of misfits anymore, which is probably why he now finds himself contained in the Foundation. But wait, what if other former circus acts were actually on the loose as SCPs? I kind of love that idea. The Elephant Man, was he an SCP? Questions. I guess that sticking on that circus vibe, it seems that SCP-527 is one of Dr. Wondertainment's little misters, a collection of 20 living, creatures or dolls or something. They were created by the elusive Dr. Wondertainment, a brand that deals with whimsy and curiosity, or so it seems. In an interview with a Foundation scientist, SCP-527 answered questions about how he came into this world. He said that he literally had just always been this way. There's nothing special about him other than the fact that he has a fish head. He mentioned his fellow little misters in the interview, saying, "Lie, Stripes, Hot, Sweetie, they got all the good stuff, I'm just a guy with a fish head." He seemed to suggest that the other creations by Wondertainment were given powers and he wasn't, although if he was real, maybe he just hasn't found out about them yet. We still don't know that much about him. It's easy to get carried away with the mystical and curiosity of it all, and don't worry, we certainly will be going there. But for just 1 second, can we take one moment to appreciate that if Mr. Fish was real, that would be pretty impressive, if not ethically corrupt. It would be a pretty cool scientific feat though, but again, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. The body of a warm-blooded mammal with the head of a cold-blooded vertebrate. How? Why? Why? How? Why? I could do this all day. Would there be any other harebrained scientists out there attaching, say, lions' heads to people or pigeons' heads to ponies just for the lols? Is Mr. Fish more Mr. than fish? Or does he think fish thoughts? If he were to impregnate a human, would they be fish babies or human babies? Or, well, scientifically, I actually do have a lot of questions. Can he breathe underwater? If he was real, perhaps he would be great to have on an aquatic research team, seeing as he likely understands what it's like to be fish and actually vocalize it better than anyone else in the world. So I guess if Mr. Fish, good old SCP-527, was real, then so too would be Mr. Chameleon, a sentient entity made of protons who can match to his background. Mr. Forgetful, a guy with a peanut allergy. Mr. Headless, pretty self-explanatory. Mr. Shapey, a transforming morphy creature. Mr. Soap, a humanoid that exudes soapy liquid and can float humans in bubbles. He sounds fun. I like him. Mr. Hungry, a humanoid who needs to eat 2,000 calories every 2 hours. If not, he'll begin consuming all matter around him, so get him to the buffet quick. Mr. Brass, an automatron humanoid made of, well, brass, who was once mistaken as a god by a cult before it ended up in containment. So many good stories. Mr. Hot, who has a weird ability to predict if a person has a child and what product that child would most desire. Miss Sweetie, the only female, a very tall woman with pink hair who needs to eat a constant supply of sugar and sends males into diabetic comas, and sometimes turns them into hard candy. Delish. Then of course there's Mr. Life and Death, an SCP that goes through the entire cycle of life and death every 75 minutes. Exhausting. Mr. Laugh, a sad clown-like creature who exudes extreme laughter but doesn't seem that pleased about it. Mr. Moon, a man whose face appears and disappears along with the lunar cycle. The discontinued and mysterious Mr. Red. Mr. Money, who sells himself to humans for their possessions. Mr. Lost, an SCP free of containment who simply wanders the earth. Mr. Mad, who wears a straitjacket and indeed does seem pretty cuckoo cocoa snaps. Mr. Scary, who curiously is a partially submerged steel structure within a large saltwater reservoir who corrodes people. Not great. Mr. Stripe, who has the baffling ability to turn people into, you guessed it, stripes. And Mr. Lie, who the Foundation would really rather you didn't know about. Okay, wow, what a troupe. Discussing this further leads me to think that actually the important question here to ask isn't so much what if SCP-527 was real, but who is Mr. One Detainment and what is their purpose? Mr. One Detainment hasn't just made the 20 Little Misters, they've also made other strange gadgets, gizmos and toys, including General Beep, who teaches kids how to make weapons, and they also own One Detainment Land, aka SCP-949, a bit like Itchy and Scratchy World. It's a theme park where a ride in the haunted house will leave you with extra limbs. Yes, extra limbs. I was wondering whether I thought Mr. Entertainment was good or bad, but I think that he, or they, as many believe it isn't just one person behind the elusive company, but instead a group of reality benders. I think they may be sick, rather like Josef Mengele, a real person, sick. Remember him? He was the psycho-Nazi death doctor who conducted awful experiments like stitching twins together and dyeing people's eyes. Not the same, but these days we do have experimental scientists like modern-day Frankensteins. For example, Dr. Sergio Cannavaro is aiming to perform the world's first head transplant, having already tested the process on dogs, controversially. If Dr. Wondertainment was real and Mr. Fish was found, would there not be ethical public outcry? The thing is though, rather like Dr. Frankenstein and his monster, these things are usually done in secret. We don't know who or what Wondertainment is. If he was real, well, unless he starts sending out golden tickets a la Willy Wonka, we may never know what he is curating in his house of horrors. So again, I'm left with more questions than answers. Mr. Fish seems like a good enough guy. He's in a collaborative confinement, he doesn't seem to be busting out anytime soon. I would absolutely love to watch a movie about he and the other little misters, but mostly I just need to know more about Wondertainment because, well, that's some ominous stuff right there. Okay, so that was that. What did you think to this? Again, if you could have the head of any other animal in the world, what would it be? I'm absolutely sticking with the whole bird of prey thing. If you like this video, please do share it with a friend, and why not check out the links in our description box for our sources and to the Instagrams of people that went into making this video. Before I go, I'm just gonna read some comments from a similar video. What if SCP-1238 was real? Now SCP-1238 is also a fish, so perhaps Mr. Fish could help us figure them out. Just an extra thought for you there. Could have a little chat with them about how eating through continental crust sucks for everyone else. Slavic Davik said, "For me, all these underwater SCPs are the most interesting. Good video, please make more." Thank you, Slavic Davik. Your name was fun to say. Fright Night TV said, "Fishy monsters. I love fried monsters with cocktail sauce and cocktails. Both are technically the sauce and go well with fried monsters. You're welcome." Wait, aren't fish friends, not food? I do like cocktails and cocktail sauce though. Now we're talking. Just one more before we close on out. Bonfire Keeper James wrote, "Lamprey are the scariest fish ever." Mate, I feel you. Thank you once again for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to leave me your comments. I'm your host, Rebecca Felgate. I'll catch you in the next video. But until then, please do stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning. And oh, you want to hear the fish head song again? Okay, just once more.